Right, over to you.
Thank you so much. And namaskar. Good evening, everybody. How have you been? Well, you and I are meeting after a little while on this platform, hopefully with renewed and refreshed energies. And I assure you that the conversation today is going to be as interesting as our previous episodes and sessions on CLS Online. Now, the author that we have today on board, let me first give you a couple of quick facts about him. He has over 200 works of poetry and short stories, and he's one of those few Indian authors to be published in all forms of literature. And apart from that, he's also the founder of a Gurgaon based incubator called Huddle, which is an active 360-degree investment platform. And he's also an active angel investor. Now, those were customary facts for an introduction, but what I'm going to tell you next are two facts which you will not find about him on any internet article, and you won't know unless you interact with him personally. The first of which is that he has amazing analogies whenever he's speaking or even writing. And the second fact is that he is as candid as it gets. He's one of those few authors who says that you can put me on the spot and I will love it as much. So without further ado, let me welcome on our platform today author Sanil Sachar. Sanil, time for you to come on screen now.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that. I do hope you do put me on the spot, and I hope I can answer you. But thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, and it's always been a pleasure speaking to you on phone as well. And well, I don't really plan to put you on spot because that's not my style per se. But if you insist, I might just. So, beginning with the first question, we're talking about your latest book today, and perhaps love. When I started reading it, the introduction caught my eye the first thing. And it begins with this concept of spaces. And it goes on to say about how spaces are everything and how reader interprets it differently, how it's different for every person. And what I also notice about your book is that it has no imposition of viewpoints on its readers. It is not, trying to direct or guide their attention in a certain direction. Like, for example, when you're watching a film, you watch what the director wants you to see, but here you've just let the readers be. So is that your way of giving them the space to be who they want to be?
Um, I think so. I see art as a form of it should either create curiosity or confusion, and therefore, when we talk of art and spaces, it actually goes hand in hand because I feel if you let the reader, in my case, reader get a sense of direction and then go into a safari of however they want to reach their end goal, it's more interesting because there are many ways of getting to the same end goal with the element of spaces created. Now the way and perhaps love in which we created spaces was having no rhythm or theme, all the way mixed or different forms of literature. We realized that having a lot of spaces between that gives room for the reader to believe there is improvement that they can build upon. And I think during this time, especially, I think space element of space is needed so that you can interact more with readers and readers can interact more with themselves. But I believe that the entire element, why I love being an artist, is because you you can have one opinion, but you can be wrong for 7 billion people and more. And therefore, you can also have one opinion and be right for many people, stand in the position where you're right for many people as well. That's why I love it. It's the reason of creating, talking about love and leaving complete spaces is because there's no definition for it. So if I had to lead people in a direction, I think I'd be the first person to have solved what love is all about.
That's absolutely true. You really can't categorize love into boxes and say this is what it is, this is what it isn't. And what I repeatedly also notice in a lot of your work, including your previous books, is that there is an intermingling of forms. Like, for example, if I take one of your earlier books, The Dark Side of Light, so there is poetry, there is scripts, there is also short stories in there. You really can't categorize it. And so it is with and perhaps love. Now, when you're dealing with a form of writing such as this, it also puts you in a much more vulnerable space. You just have to be out there. Have you ever been scared of being vulnerable, or have you ever thought that, no, how can I put this out there? What if people don't like it?
The beauty of getting constructive or negative feedback is that you rarely get it, and when you get it, it helps you improve. So I've never been scared of getting negative feedback about my work, and negative because it stands true, because it's always helped me reshape and improve for the next print or the next book. But having said that, I've never been I'm very comfortable being vulnerable. I think that's very important. It to be aware that you don't know it all, and you probably will never know it all is very important, especially as a writer, because we are writing opinions, or at least our opinions on what we research. Um, but the reason I like mixing up all forms of literature is because it breaks the monotony for me. I feel, to attract a non-reader. And for me, and I think everyone is a reader or a non-reader. We just choose what to pick up. We choose when to pick up. So everyone is a reader of different forms of content. Um, Creating an amalgamation is almost like giving a buffet, right? It's like you'll be able to attract someone and somewhere. And if they connect with it, they'll go back to your previous work, they'll challenge you. But I don't want to make people comfortable with my style of writing, because I feel that there shouldn't just be one style. We need to be questioning ourselves as writers, challenging ourselves a little bit more each time. Um, Even now, when I read my work, and I find it very hard to read my own work after it's written, but when I read it, I try and find ways of improving it, because now I'm reading it as a reader. So that's the whole agenda of mixing all forms of literature. And also, I do want to tell you, Niharika, that I wasn't an avid reader when I was much younger. So for me, literature was only school books or college assignments.
Textbooks.
Anything was, yeah, whatever the textbooks said,
Yeah.
English literature, whatever we were learning. So I realized that when I started picking up reading, I would pick it up because I would read multiple books at one go, and I would never complete them. Then I was like, why not just create an experience like a roller coaster, and then let it all have one or multiple ends? And that's the whole agenda of creating confusion or curiosity.
That's wonderful. So I was right about that bit about analogies. Viewers, if you just got onto that bit about books being a buffet, the style of writing being a buffet, I think you must have gotten my point. And talking further about this, so I happened to read one of your very recent interviews where you sort of say the same thing that if I keep writing in a constant flow, then I'm being unjust to my readers. Now, that is one point of view, which I would say is not a very popular one among writers, because they feel that readers are looking for some sort of predictability, or they're looking for something specific from their favorite author. So, from that perspective, have you ever worried about losing out readership, or not living up to the expectations that your readers have from you?
I'll catch the last bit, because I would love to know the expectations readers have for writers, because I feel that's motivation. Because, as writers, regardless of how well our work does, how well it's received, or, if readers connect with it or not. But I think the term of expectation is what we set ourselves low on always, because we're just creating first pages, and then they have two flaps that have a cover, the back cover, and then it becomes a book. And then you have to think of a reader base. For me, I'm never concerned about a reader base, because I I've never written to ensure that the reader stays with me. That's never the agenda. I want to ensure that the reader loves reading. And there are many more writers around the world, or around the world, that can probably write much more than me. And they'll write work far superior in their genres or their styles. So my job is that when they pick up my work, they should connect with the book. I would rather, because authors have a shelf life. I know, again, not popular opinion to say that, but the books don't have a shelf life. I know it's ironic. Books will, we speak of books that have stayed with us since our grandparents, since our great grandparents. We speak of the book. The author then comes second. So I don't want to be a favorite author. I would love to be somewhere in someone's favorite quote, someone's favorite saying, the most hated chapter for that matter. But it should be the book that should live longer, always.
Well, unpopular, but I think this is what this platform is all about, garnering unpopular opinions and getting to hear as many different perspectives as we can. That is another one that we get to hear today. Poetry is something which has been very close to your heart. And when you first started writing, you began with poetry. I'm going to throw two different questions at you, one by one. So the first one is that which genre do you choose to challenge yourself as a writer? You've written in every genre. You've written scripts. You've written poetry. You've written a novel as well. So some authors choose poetry as a form to challenge themselves. Which one is it that you choose?
Poetry. I find poetry the hardest to write, which is why I'm writing more of it right now. And I find it personally, when I write, I find writing a novel the easiest. So I feel that I find that I want to answer and justify why I believe that, because I feel that it's for me easier to adapt, work, and elongate it. So I can keep stretching it like dough, but I find it very hard to make that perfect role of just poetry and short stories are slightly harder because you have to make your mind up as the writer. And with novels, I feel you have to make your mind up, but you have a lot of roads that you can keep turning towards. So that's why I've been writing a lot of poetry. In fact, my first published work definitely is poetry, and then it went on into all forms of literature. And I tried to then go into where I was finding comfort. Then I went to short stories because I was second comfortable there, second most comfortable. Then novels, I found easiest to write because the first time I ever started writing, um, when I thought I wanted to publish something, was actually a novel, and that came out very easily. So I was like, let's start with a harder route and then hope to see if it graduates. And that's why readers get that motivation, because if they picked up on where I felt I needed most improvement, and received it, gave feedback. When I was blogging when I was much younger, and I would get messages about where I could improve, I was like, wow, people are really taking out time to tell me where I'm wrong. Therefore, I pursued it a little more, and and perhaps love is probably my most daring work, uh, a- because of reader base. And I think that's where the books have given freedom.
Sure, right. So now the second question related to poetry is, it's of course very close to your heart, so you view it in a different way. But I feel that in our world, we have two kinds of people. One who really love and appreciate poetry. Second kind of people, I belong to the second part, is that people who believe poetry either is there within you or not. It's either you have it or you don't. You really can't cultivate the skill of writing poetry. What do you think about that? Either you have
I
it or you or
I have two instant like thoughts to that actually. One is that if it was, so I don't think you either have it or you don't. But if that was true, and I write poetry, I just wish it came to me earlier. But it doesn't. It's I don't. I think you have to. You can develop it, because I feel everything is poetry. In any form of poetry is basically rhythm, and rhythm can be in three words. It could be in an entire novel. If there's rhythm, that's what I associate with poetry. Traditional poetry, as we read it, has become it, there is a set of audience that believes that it is an archaic form. It's a dying art form, because it's harder to understand, or it is filled with metaphors. But I feel that that's the poetry needs metaphors. It needs a lot of analogy within it because it is traditionally smaller. So we're trying to pack in a novel in the shortest form. And a novel in its most traditional form is also poetry if you've been able to read it with a set rhythm. So I find it hard to differentiate poetry. I know that sounds very daft, but but at the same time, I feel that you can develop any skill. So similarly, poetry also is just a skill form that gets adapted with more and more mistakes you make when you're writing.
Well, I'll give that a thought and I'll try to be a poet sometime. And if I ever do
I look
write
forward to that. Yeah.
poetry, okay. So this time I must take a comment from one of our viewers. Priyanka ji says, any plans to return to the normal format, novel format? I loved Rebound.
Definitely. I'm currently, at least for myself, writing a novel. I don't know if it becomes a novel to publish, if it's worthy of, I feel readers getting to read it. I'll definitely get it out. I'm actually dabbling between two books right now. They will hopefully meet and become one. Yeah.
That's fascinating to know. So, novels essentially require a lot of research. And from what I've read about you, you really love going into that depth of research. Like, for instance, when you were writing The Dark Side of Light. So, there is a short story in there, members only. And you had actual conversations with strippers because that story is about India's strip club in 2013. What kind of research did you do for And Perhaps Love? Because it's such a free flowing book. It has thoughts which I might just have on a random night and I'll pen them down. So, what kind of research did you do for this one?
So, I had so much fun researching and perhaps love because I got to speak with strangers who probably I should be thanking, which is why in the acknowledgements I have said this is for you. Like I've literally said the word you to anyone because I picked up a lot of conversations that I was during my own travels, during certain solo trips that I did, and I would sit and have conversations with strangers at bars, at restaurants, at coffee houses, and I realized that the conversations we were having, I knew I was writing a book. I didn't know it was And Perhaps Love. But it helped me, extract words from them. And I did this certain exercise that it happened actually during a random sitting in, I was in Manchester and I was sitting having a coffee, very tired, and someone had just got done with a interview and she was filled with energy. So I was living off her energy. And she's like, "What are you writing?" And I wasn't. I was trying to just sketch, and I don't know how to sketch. And I said, "Give me a word." And she gave me one word. And I said, "Give me another word." And we kept building a story on that word. And she left. She left, went on to carry on with her day. And I ended up writing what actually is in the book somewhere. So what happened is I was playing off people's emotions. And I think that's what love is, right? It's the purest emotion, and it's the first emotion that leads to everything. The other research I did is I read a lot of different books, not complete. I would be lying if I read a lot of books on love. And I started realizing that everyone is talking about love when it comes to a person, or rather than object, rather than themselves. I mean, there are books about love, about if you're, loving yourself and appreciating yourself. But there wasn't love in themes. There was no love was never a protagonist. It was always an emotional protagonist. So that's why when I started writing And Perhaps Love, I removed all the protagonists I had or the characters I had in my mind and just left their characteristics and made love the big character. So it was different research to the previous work, but it was more free flowing. There was no right or wrong answer because, like I said, it's I think it's one of the safest and most dangerous topics to touch upon because you can never know enough of it.
It's also a lot like that book, Notes to Myself. When I was reading your work, I got reminded of that a lot. Because Notes to Myself is also about understanding yourself, about, diving deep into yourself. So it's not just about emotions, about one protagonist, but about the emotions, which in a way become your protagonists. So did you take any inspiration from Notes to Myself?
I didn't, I should because I've heard people have compared this book to Notes to Myself, and I haven't had the opportunity of reading it. But of course, if someone's referring to a book, you have to learn from it. But it has a huge compliment because I think I've heard so much about it. I know I sound like again, like I said, I'm a newer reader of the block. As I am a writer, so I do want to read it. Um, but yeah, I think the element that you said, someone else also mentioned how there's a rawness in the book. I just want to ensure that while I was being completely candid and raw in this book, I want to ensure it communicates. There's a back and forth communication with the reader, because this book is not all me, and there's so much fiction in it that I want to ensure that people can say that no, this is not fiction for me. This is my truth. So people need to find themselves in it, and I think that's what books like Notes to Myself, from what I have gathered, does. It helps you relate to fiction as reality and vice versa.
Absolutely. So, like I was reading some parts, I went like, "Oh, that's absolutely me," and the other parts, I thought, "Oh, this must be somebody else's story, or this must probably be drawn from your reality." Do you have your copy of Anne Perhaps Love right now with you?
I do. I have it right next to me actually. Yeah.
Fantastic. So, I want you to read us something from that.
Okay. And just to make it, because I have literally no favorites in here. Not that I'm
Okay.
saying I find it very hard. So I would honestly, whichever page number you feel, or if anyone can just put a page number in the comments, I will pick it up wherever they say, and I'll read whatever comes to mind from the book. So
I
any
was
page.
waiting for this. I was waiting for this. I have
Okay.
five that I've written down.
Okay. By all means, please tell me, and I'll pick it up.
All right, so page number 187 is what I want you to begin with.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay. All right. So you want me to read the entire thing, right? I'll just go for
Yes,
the.
yes, yes, of course.
I see a reflection run. Sense the deflection done. The gas pipes stop leaking, numb. Close my eyes, but I'm not sleeping, succumb. Shadows are brighter than the light around my face. Darkness isn't all that bad when what's in offer isn't what you want to embrace. A halo is a noose, a dead end. Maybe that's why we refer to it as short-term friend. Questions and answers skip around our board. A chess game with no master. Experimenting is the rhythm to what will be secured. Those who know better than not to speak. Those who don't know never stop gathering believers to the peak. A view in sight, never a view we are on. Progress is an investment we are sold, never a landmark ever since we are born. I see a reflection, it's me. I sense a deflection, I can see. The pipes in my hand, the nozzle on the stand. The noose an arm's length away. The chest game still incomplete. I thank my curiosity, others call OCD, to stay on and stay. I rather have progress, the better.
So, my favorite line out of this entire piece is the one on progress. What was going through your mind when you penned that line down? It's such a deep thought that it's never sold as a landmark to us, but an investment. Yet, if you look at it, progress in itself is the biggest thing, it's the biggest stride that we make. We keep saying that the only challenge you have is to be better than who you were yesterday, and that's progress. But again, we are told it's an investment, it's not a landmark. So what were you thinking when you pen down that line?
I definitely believe that success and progress are they only meet each other for a split second. Because success is not a landmark; it's a momentary action. It's an accomplishment that should be developed from. Therefore, everything. I mean, this entire. I do want to say that this entire piece that I wrote was also during a period where I was self-questioning myself, as we all end up questioning ourselves, regardless of how bright the day is. And I think it came a realization that an investment basically is where hope and reality is led by your dedication or what you're putting in. So it's an investment. It's a road that, where however uncharted it is, you're confident because you're working for it rather than just work for it. Um, this entire piece, for chess. I mean, I know I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to explain stuff. But chess for me essentially is I'm not a great chess player. Let me just put that out there. I only put chess out there because it's live, right? I mean, there are different moves, and you're never playing it alone. There's always someone out there who can play it. So uh, I like the element of the term investment coming into the picture primarily because that means we're vested for the long run, and we're doing stuff that is not just for ourselves. So this entire piece of work is me trying to say that it's not worth just working for yourself. You have to, there has to be someone else that'll reap out of it in whichever way.
Correct. What is your one burning desire? What is the impact that you want to make through your work? This is something I've come across quite often when I was researching for this conversation. Let me put it that way. So, what is your one burning desire? You're into startups and in angel investing and also writing. So, take us through that.
My motivation doing, working with like such phenomenal founders across across board of startups and with my own co-founder and uh, all writing is all about helping people. I mean, I take it as a relay race, and I always do. I mean, just as I was an avid runner, and I would always believe that the race was always won by the other person, which means you can only do your part and then ensure that you've given a lead, give it your best. So my burning, I don't have really have a burning desire as much as, I'm working each day, just ensuring that people can take what I can provide them, however limited or in excess it is, and develop it as something larger than it is. I just want people to keep continuously building on what I can provide. So words for me are merely a way of saying if you disagree with it, great. Build something that you agree with. If you agree with it, why do you agree with it? And take it forward to others that will agree with it. So in the startup ecosystem, when we're building ventures, we're always doing it because there's a niche somewhere. We're trying to disrupt something that is bound to, fall, or we're trying to improve it. So it's always for tomorrow. And the beauty of tomorrow is that it's never for yourself. Because I mean, it's a cliche, right? We only have today. And therefore, if
Yeah.
you keep building for tomorrow, you're building for someone else who does, like I said, an author does not have a shelf life. Therefore, the person, I often believe, does not have a shelf life. The reason we remember people is because of what they do. So I want what we do to be taken forward and not who did it to be the reason for it to stay forward. So for me, it's not, it's and perhaps not rather than the author, who are disconnected when I say this. And it's for me, there's not the startups founders, but the product or the service we're creating.
Correct. And speaking of tomorrow, it's always a better tomorrow. We always, no matter what today might be, we always envision a better tomorrow. It's always built on hope. And I see a
Yeah.
lot of in your book and perhaps love. So let me bring out another piece which I have noted down, another page number which I've marked. So that would be page number 191. It's a very small paragraph, but I want you to read us that.
Okay. God shows himself in the smallest ways. You see that lonely leaf by the pond? It hasn't drowned yet. It's beating all earth, not getting pushed by the wind. That is a sign from God. A sign that even the most helpless beings can be invincible. But I also really like this. I do want to say, now that I read it out loud, because it's
Yeah.
very strange for me to say I like this and not that, but I particularly connect with this, especially during what we're going through, all of us. We're in a we're all in a level playing field of hoping and working towards a better tomorrow. I use God as the energy and the force here because everyone can find God in one way. You can be an atheist and believe in something. I'm just putting that term as God right now. But the this actually, I do want to give a background to this. This came when I was on holiday. This is one of those pieces where I was actually sitting. I don't know where, I don't know the location, but I was sitting by a pond or a river, and there were a lot of people. It was a park somewhere, and it was just in observation of what was happening. Of course, what I was seeing was not exactly what I wrote, but Um, what comes from it is that simplicity is really the notion of ensuring a better tomorrow. And you can complicate the process of today, but it's only to create simplicity. I mean, you look at technology, we're getting the most complicated algorithms to create simplicity. So it's quite oxymoronic in its method and output, but it's all happening for a better tomorrow. Yeah,
In fact, when we imagine a better tomorrow, we imagine it without any complexity, where we can just be. Like, for example, the simplest pleasures of life are probably sitting on a silent afternoon, letting the
mm,
sunlight filter through, and you're just sitting there, maybe taking a nap or sitting with your loved ones. I mean, it's simple,
yeah,
yet it's better. It is better than today.
yeah. Having said that, I do want to maybe just differ on one point is that I feel that complications are needed so that you can develop, or observation is needed rather than complication. And many times when we get comfortable, we get we wear blinders. There's tunnel vision that comes with comfort. That's I feel a repercussion of comfort. But comfort, acknowledging how you can improve and and improve each day is probably what we need to do. And many times it's you have to get distracted to do that, or you have to see some chaos, manageable chaos to do that.
I think it does take chaos to come back to clarity. So confusion is the beginning of all clarity, essentially. I mean, if you never had that,
Yeah,
you would never make the effort to sit with yourself, to ask yourself, what is it that you really want? And in that process, you might, for all reasons, be avoiding your destiny or the path of greatness that you're meant to be on.
yeah.
So, do you believe in God? Just out of curiosity, because you
I
mentioned God.
do. I believe in forces. I believe in God. I definitely do. I do. But I believe more in energy and forces. I feel. I don't. I think everyone has equal powers if they come together. That is a act of God, and if that can happen, then brilliant. But there is definitely a force out there, and it is in the form of God. But I truly believe that humans, honestly, when they huddle up, when they meet together, and they can do something, it creates that is a godly impact in the right form.
Correct. So before we move on to the audience questions and before we quickly just move to the close of the conversation, I just want you to read one last piece, which is
Uh,
page number 204.
204.
A very beautiful ending. Let me just tell our viewers that, and that's the reason I want you to read it.
Okay. Talk second, first make that move. Whisper what should be heard. This game is played by two. Look here, there's nothing to be offered just yet. Progress takes time. There's no rush. We're building a kingdom, not a shed.
So that's my favorite line right there. We're building a kingdom, not a shed. Great things take time. All right, so we've had comments flowing in from our viewers all this while. So, sometime back, a few minutes back, Amita Bhuwania ji said, well expressed. And Nishant Srivastav ji has written us a very long comment, which I'm going to read out right now. Rightly said that poetry has rhythm, but it's beyond that also as compared to story or novel. It is typically reserved for expressing something special in an artistic way. The language of poetry tends to be more expressive or decorated with comparisons, rhyme, and rhythm contributing to a different sound and feel. Do you have anything to say to that?
I love this line that Nishanji has said, which is it's typically reserved for expressing something special in an artistic way. And the only response I have to 100% agree is that I think everything should be expressed in an artistic way, because everyone has their own artistic approach. So it creates that uniqueness, and therefore that's exactly I think Nishanji is on my side when I say that everything is poetry in a way, because we all have to express ourselves in a different manner in order to understand perspectives. I think that's what art is all about, challenging the right.
I think we'll need another conversation on poetry. So we'll keep all the thoughts on poetry for later. And
Uh,
Nirmal Bhasinji says, variations in writing is a virtue. Be unpredictable, and I will definitely read your books. So you've got another reader there, another fan. And Principal Bhupinder says, such literary confluence. Brilliant. Thank you so much, sir, for always tuning in. And he's one of our top fans, I must tell you. So he's always there supporting us on every conversation, and he is always avidly listening on
wow.
whatever is discussed. So it'll be equally to have a conversation with him as well, yeah, if you have a chance to reach out to him or meet him.
I
And
will, certainly.
And CJG says very right. So this was sometime earlier in the conversation, right at the beginning, and he says very right, Sanil. It's not criticism, but an expression of someone's own perception, which gives us a different perspective.
Yeah. So I truly believe that there was a time when people would have asked me not to have written because they felt experience builds or time builds content, and I told them experience will build content. So I can go out and make time happen faster if I get more experiences. And I was very young when I started writing, apparently. But that was someone's feedback that pushed me, helps you express yourself a little better. But you have to, I think, taking people's feedback and being impacted by it negatively is saying more about ourselves, and rather than the other person. The other person's use their energy and their time to criticize you so that you can improve. If you can take that criticism and convert it, you've just got yourself a colleague rather than someone you want to call a hater, which they're not.
Correct. I think feedback is also what keeps the writers going. It's like an insight into who is reading you. So if you don't have that, you will never be able to understand where you want to be as a writer, or what is it that you want to give to the audience. I mean, I've personally believed that you also need to build the kind of audience that you want. You need to give them something which they've not read. And if you need to do that, you need to also take criticism because not
Yeah,
everybody will
and take risks. You have to take risks
take
and
risk.
then different reader base to give their opinion and then see what is common and how you can improve. So taking risks is pretty much the motto that one has to live by if they have to create.
Correct. So now, since we're almost over with the time that was given to us, I want one last closing remark from you before we finally exit the conversation.
I mean, for me, I haven't even realized why time has flown. What I do want to say, be it, it doesn't have to be about and perhaps love. I think the whole element of where we are today, the fact that we are all speaking over video, we're all utilizing this time of ours to communicate. It showcases the power of people together. I think whatever is going on for us to come out stronger right now, it is literally going to be being empathetic and showing love to one another. And many times, showing love is also by not interfering. And the reason I share that is because we take love in the form of showcasing and energy and everything that's romantic. There's much more to it. But the last thing I want to say is we need to concentrate more on ourselves. The reason it's called and perhaps love is because we end up doing everything in our lives now and then think of, oh yeah, and there's perhaps love in this. That's literally why I wanted to call it and perhaps love so that people can realize that it should be a mirror before you believe it's fiction. But thank you so much for having me. We definitely have many more conversations amongst everyone who's going to watch this, and of course, all of us. And I want to thank CLS for organizing this. I'll be
No,
I'll
it's,
be
it's
watching next week. Yeah,
It's been our pleasure, and it's always nice to interact with different authors from different genres. So we've tried and had different flavors of conversations on CLS, and this is probably one of those few which is about love and romance, light-hearted genres. So it's been an absolute pleasure interacting with you, Sanil. Thank you so much for being here this evening, and
thank
to
you.
our audience for engaging with us through your lovely comments and questions. And you can follow our pages on Facebook and on Instagram. Both of them are called CLS Chandigarh. And you can also follow Sanil on his pages. So the Twitter handle is called Sanil Sachar. So is the Facebook one. It's called Sanil Sachar one, and Instagram you can find him by the name of Sanil Sachar. Follow him and do read his book, and it's going to be a great read, I'm sure. And the best part is that you don't need to read it in any particular chronology. You can pick it up from anywhere, start reading, leave it, go to another page. That's how it follows. So this is me, Niharika, saying goodbye for this week. For this evening, we'll see you soon on CLS Online. Namaskar. Thank you so much.